Dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second edition of the European Defence Fund Luxembourg Info Day. My name is Alexander Link. I am the Defence Industry Coordinator and National Focal Point for the European Defence Fund at Lux Innovation, and I will guide you through the next 60 to 90 minutes of this info session. So I hope that most of you have had the chance to participate to the Info Day of the European Commission, which took place last week, and that you have already had the possibility to establish contacts with potential consortium partners. For those of you who couldn't, be ensured that there will be, of course, a refresh during our today's session. Now, before introducing today's agenda and our distinguished guests, I would like to remind those of you who doesn't know yet this streaming platform that you can use the chat box on the right side to ask questions at any moment in time. We will answer them either directly in the chat box or take them later during the dedicated Q&A session. And we also informed that this session will be recorded. So let's start with the information session. Our first speaker will be Benjamin Questier, Director of R&D and Innovation Support, which will provide you with a brief introduction on our defense industry activities and more specifically, the European Defense Fund. Benjamin, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you, Alex, and good morning, everyone. On behalf of Lux Innovation, welcome to the EDF Second National Information Day. It's a real pleasure for us to host this event and to make sure that you all have the relevant information to enable you to participate successfully to the upcoming calls. Because as a National Innovation Agency, our mission is twofold. First, of course, we want to enable companies to innovate today so that they are ready for tomorrow. But on a larger level, we want to support and contribute to national growth through innovation. Hence, with the trust and support of our Defense Directorate, Lux Innovation coordinates initiatives that enable national industry to access defense markets through innovation and through different programs. We have recently opened a national joint call, and even if it's not the topic of today, I invite all today's participants to have a look at the website researchindustrycollaboration.lu to see if there are some opportunities for you as well. Because I've heard through the ecosystem that our national RTOs and institutes are still looking for partners. So the national call is one initiative, but there are also more. We offer access and support for access to the CapTex of the European Defence Agency. Last month, we have organized the first Luxembourg pavilion at Eurosatory, which is one of the largest fairs on defense and security. We have coordinated and set up the first national catalog of your different actors. So it's important also for us to offer you this visibility to the ecosystem. And today, with the second information session, we want to highlight, of course, how to access and how to participate to these new programs. So I'll keep it short. I leave the floor to our invité. And as such, I would like to thank you, Monsieur Galtier from the European Commission for your presence today, but also thank you, Madame Desjeux from Safran, to share your vision as prime contractor. J'espère que vous noterez l'intérêt de nos acteurs et que nous sommes tous témoins d'un début de collaboration en confiance et à long terme. Auch een große merci aan ons college voor je ervaring te delen en merci aan de direction de la Défense voor je vertrouwen. I wish you all a very interesting and a fruitful event.
Thank you, Benjamin, for this good introduction. I can only point out that, in fact, it's very important to understand that Lux Innovation is engaged on numerous activities related to the defense market, and they are all meant to benefit the Luxembourg industry. And whether it's for national, European, or international defense-related initiatives, we are there to support you in getting your footprint in this competitive defense market. So with this, I would like to pass on the word to Guillaume Galtier, Policy Officer of the European Commission, and more specifically, the Directorate General for Defense, Industry and Space, which is in charge of operating the European Defense Fund. Guillaume will give us a brief overview of the second call for proposals, as well as enlighten us on the opportunities for SMEs and research organizations. Don't hesitate to write down your questions in the chat. We'll take them definitely. Guillaume, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alexander, and good morning, everyone. So I will take you through a couple of slides to focusing on the opportunities for SMEs and research organizations within the European Defence Fund. So I don't know if you can see the slides. Here they are. Good. So I'm Guillaume Galtier from the Commission in DG Defis, Defense Industry and Space, working on the implementation of the European Defence Fund. So I I don't want here to redo the info day that we had last week. I really invite you to have a look at the slides of the info day, which are available on DG Defi's website, and I will give you all the useful link at the end of this presentation. I will also invite you to, if you have time, to look at the recording of the event, because it will be available normally today. So you will find there all the details, information and details about the European Defence Fund. What I want to do here today, within this limited time frame, is to really focus on the SME and research organization opportunities. So on this slide, what you see is a summary of the European Defence Fund key objectives, which are manifolds, but which some of them are really SME oriented, if I may say so, because the European Defence Fund is there to support collaborative and cross-border cooperation through the entire cycle of the defense R&D. And this includes also disruptive technologies, where we know research organization may also play a significant role. It's about competitiveness and innovation, and we all know that this competitiveness and innovation capacity stems from the most agile and innovative entities, which are the SMEs, and it's not only about big companies. It's also, and it's one of the key elements of the European Defence Fund, is to incentivize the participation of SMEs and also other actors which are not necessarily already in the defense sector. And what I'm going to do in the next slide is to highlight really these dimensions that are highlighted, that are mentioned there. But of course, the EDF is not only there to support these three objectives. There are also other objectives about reducing fragmentation of the industrial landscape, to bring together demand and supplies, to maximize the outcome of the defense spending more together in defense, to close technological gaps, also to make sure that this is done in consistency with other defense initiatives at multinational and EU level, and also, of course, in the aim to strengthen the Europe's resilience and strategic autonomy. So I don't know how familiar you are with the European Defence Fund, but it's an 8 billion euro program. It's grants, so we are not buying anything. We are just supporting projects. It's 1/3 for research, so it's represent 2.7 billion euros over the period 21-27, and 5.3 billion euro for development. And it's open to member states in Norway, which are fully part of the program, and other entities outside these can also participate under certain conditions. What I want to highlight today is really how the EDF is incentivizing the participation of SMEs. We are doing that through mainly 4 strands, I would say. First of all, because we have calls dedicated to SMEs and research organization. And on top of that, these calls are non-prescriptive. They are what we could call open calls, in the sense that you can propose whatever you want, as part of these calls. They represent over 50 million euros every year, which are really dedicated to SMEs and research organization. This is, of course, without prejudice of the possibility of the SMEs and the research organization to take part to all other calls that we are opening every year. But this is to mention that SMEs and Euro have somehow an earmarked minimum budget. Second point, there is one of the award criterion on which the proposals that we will receive are assessed is specifically looking at the establishment of new cross-border cooperation with SMEs. And just for you to know, this award criteria is the only one which is weighted to for both research and development. So it's an important one. And third point, we have a funding scheme which is um, encouraging, incentivizing the participation of SMEs with an increase in the funding rate if you include a certain number of SMEs in your project. So this is an important point, which is only relevant for development actions because this is where we are encouraging co-financing. For research, the projects are funded 100% by default. And fourth, as a fourth point, we are also offering coaching to SMEs for all awarded projects under the SME calls and also for the disruptive call. What I wanted to highlight on the right part of the slide is just to say that we have already experienced how these incentives work and what are the effects that they produce, because in the precursor program of the EDF, the EDIDP, we noticed that most of the SMEs budget, I mean, most of the SMEs participating in the action and most of the budget allocated to SMEs stem from other calls than the SME calls, which shows that this incentive measure work. So I'm going to detail a bit the four strands. This is a slide just to remind you that all our communication in the European Defence Fund is articulated around what we call categories of actions, which are there to map a bit all what can be done and funded in the defense sector. We have 15 thematic categories of action, and we have also two horizontal categories, which are addressing disruptive technologies and innovative defense technologies. And this is the way we organize every year our work program and our calls for proposal. If I look at how this is reflected in this year call for proposal, so we have published our calls at the beginning of June, and they are now open for submission until the 24th of November this year. It represents a global envelope of over 900 million euro. And as you can see, in these various categories of action I mentioned earlier, you have some specific topics which we are addressing with their own budget. And what you see in blue are the research topics, and what you see in green are the development topics. And as I mentioned earlier, we have SME calls, which you can see on the bottom of the slides, where we are addressing both research and development for over 50 million euros. This is just to highlight these two calls, open calls for SMEs, just to mention that here the rule is that all the members of the consortium should be SMEs or research organization when it comes to this research open call. And we want the consortium to be coordinated by an SME. The participation of research organization is allowed up to 40% of the funding requested. And we have also imposed a strict limit in subcontracting in order to make sure that the grant is going to the SMEs. So they are this call is implemented through a lump sum methodology, which means that we are not requesting a heavy administrative burden once the action is running. We are just paying on completion of the work. which is less burden for the participants. So mirroring this research call, we have the development call. So here the development call is for SMEs only. So all members of the consortium need to be SMEs, and the same rule regarding subcontracting apply. Second strand, as I mentioned in my first slide, is about award criteria. All the proposals that we receive under the European Defence Fund, they are assessed through a grid of 8 award criteria, 2 of which are only applicable for development actions. But what I wanted to highlight is that this one of these criteria, which is award criteria 5, new cross-border cooperation, is looking at how SMEs are involved in the project and what is the added value of these SMEs in the project. So it's a really important criterion because it is assessed both on a qualitative and a quantitative way, and it is really looking at how SMEs and midcaps are participating. So this is to mention that we are looking at that very closely, and this is a real incentive for the participant to include SMEs in their project. Third point that I mentioned earlier is about the funding rates. By default, all research actions are funded 100%, meaning that 100% of your eligible costs are going to be financially supported by the EDF. Whereas for development actions, since we are closer to the market, what we want to encourage is a leverage effect, a co-financing from whoever, but mainly from final users, which might be will be the member states. So that's the reason why the baseline funding rate that we offer for development action is lower than 100%. However, we have set up a bonus system which allows to increase this baseline funding rate to higher rates, which, however, do not reach 100% in any case, meaning that we really want to incentivize the leverage effect as well. This bonus system is at three potential contributors. One is linked to the PESCO, to the Permanent Structure Cooperation. So if your project is developed in the context of the PESCO, then you can get 10% additional funding rate. If you are involving midcaps above a certain threshold, then you can get also a bonus. And last but not least, if you include SMEs above 10% of the allocate the cost, eligible cost, then you can get extra funding rate as well. All the more if it's about cross-border cooperation with SMEs. So this is really done to incentivize participation of SMEs and midcaps. One important point regarding SME and midcap, because this is a question which is often pointed out, is that being an SME is to be understood in the meaning of the European Commission. And so there is a definition of what an SME is. It is an important information to in order to be able to be eligible to some calls. So typically, as I said, the 2 open calls, they are only open to SMEs and research organizations. So you need to demonstrate that you are an SME. It's also important for the award criterion, so that's why I mentioned it earlier, and also for the SME bonus. So what you need to do in order to prove that you are an SME is not only to self-declare yourself as an SME, if you are, but also to go through the self-assessment, which is to be performed directly on the participants page where you register your company. And there is a detailed guidance explaining how you should do that, and the result of this self-assessment will tell you that you are or not, and if you are or not an SME. This is, of course, going to be checked afterwards by the Commission services, but this will come after the submission of the proposal. So important that coordinators of the project do check if the participants have performed this self-assessment. Because this will be important for these 3 points mentioned on the top of the slides. Next slide is just to say that if you are looking for partners, but I'm sure that the colleagues taking the floor after me will also insist on that, we offer several ways for you to let's say to find partners. The most obvious one I would say is on the funding and tender portal where we publish the calls for proposal. There is a possibility for you to register your company and request or offer your expertise in the given topics in the topics of your interest. We also, of course, have organized some brokerage events. The one we organized last week was a good opportunity for you to network. There will be others, so it's very important that you reach out to your national focal points in order to know what's going on at multinational or national level in terms of matchmaking events. So your network of EDF national focal point, which is a new network that has been set up in the past few months, is now fully operational, and you have a dedicated website, and you should know your NFP national contact, which is Alexander. So if I'm not wrong, so you are there. These are the good entry point for you to liaise between you and your MOD, and also to answer some of the questions that you may have. We also advertise here some other opportunity that you have, which is about the platform set up by the European Defence Agency. They have a B2B platform that you can use, and also what the European Network of Defence-related region is doing with a lot of information about what's going on in the defence sector. No, national focal points, I will not insist too much, but they are there really to provide you with practical information and assistance. They organize awareness raising events, they help with partner search, and they signpost to relevant national and EU sources. They have their dedicated website, as I said. They are really mirroring the organization which has been set up for Horizon Europe. So the fourth point of my initial slide was about business coaching. Business coaching, we offer that for all winning SMEs in the three calls mentioned on the left. So the two open calls for SMEs, development and research, and the one for disruptive technology. So here what we offer is a coaching for a period of 2 years in order to try to meet your business challenges and to reduce the time from research to development or from development to market. This is intended to really boost your growth. A last slide just to provide a full picture, because I really insisted on my presentation on the SMEs and research organization. But just for you to know that in order to participate to the EDF, you need to meet a certain number of conditions, which are quite, I would say um, easy to understand, but a bit specific to the defense sector. First of all, we want consortia to be composed of at least 3 eligible entities from 3 different member states or Norway. It's a bit less for disruptive call. We allow more flexibility there with only 2. We need all the infrastructure, facilities, assets, and resources for the action, and those of the recipients and main subcontractors located in the EU and Norway. If you want to use things which are outside the EU, you need to meet some certain condition, and this will not be financially supported by the EDF. Important point, we also want all members of the consortium, affiliated entities, and subcontractors involved in the action not to be controlled by third countries entities in order to be eligible for funding. However, we have a derogation which allows this also for entities subject to control if they can provide approved guarantees. Important point as well, we need the results of the action not to be subject to control or restriction by third countries. And last but not least, we need to comply, of course, with international law and high ethics standards. This is ethics is a point which is sometimes not understood, but we have a dedicated guidance on what we request regarding ethics. So you will find everything in the call documentation. What you have in the box on the right are 3 additional eligibility conditions which apply specifically to development actions. So we request more, I would say, commitment when it comes to development actions with a proof of co-financing. If you are not funded 100%, including with the bonus, then you need to demonstrate that the cost not covered by the union are going to be covered by other means. You need to prove also that the project that you are willing to perform, if they address a design, are based on harmonized defense capability requirements. And if you want to go beyond design, you need also to demonstrate that there is an intention to procure from final users, and that the projects will be based on common technical specifications. So you will find all the necessary information on these different hyperlinks. Once again, I really encourage you, if you have not done it yet, to get the Info Day presentation that we performed last week, because I think this is the most important source of information for you in order to have all the details. If you have any remaining questions, you have an email address that you can follow, that you can use to send us all your questions, and we will answer as soon as possible. But please try first to see if your national focal points does not have the answer. So thanks for your attention. This is all from my side. The floor is back to you, Alexander. Thanks.
Thank you, Guillaume, for the presentation and for the clear overview it has provided for this year's calls. I think there's a lot of good incentives also for our SMEs and research organizations. And therefore, as you said, I think it's very important that you also have a look at the call text that were presented last week to really get a better view on what could be of potential interest for you. And secondly, also, Guillaume, you mentioned it, I think the National Focal Point Network is there to support you, and we will get back to this at the later stage of this info session. So thank you, Guillaume. If there's no questions so far, I would propose to go on with the next speech of Isabelle Desjeux. She will have to leave a bit earlier. That's why we'll also have the opportunity to have a Q&A session just right after that. Isabelle Desjeux is Head of European Affairs at Safran Electronics and Defense, and as such has great experience in defense-related R&D programs such as the European Defence Fund. Isabelle will explain us about the challenges of a prime contractor to establish a balanced consortium and the opportunities which can arise for SMEs to collaborate with a prime such as Safran. Isabelle, the floor is yours.
Okay. So should I share the slides that I prepared? Or...
Yes, I will take them right away.
Okay, good.
There we go.
All right. So in the meantime, I can say good morning to everybody. Happy to be here, and hopefully I will be able to help you and by giving maybe some tips, and also to give you the way as a large group as we are building up a consortium, and therefore how can you fit into that process. So in the next slide, I will just present you two aspects of the same work. First of all, what are the challenges for a leader to build a consortium in an EDF project, and that will be based on experience. And then the second part will be more dedicated to how you as an EDTIB, SME or RTOs, mid-cap, could integrate an EDF project. So on the first part of my presentation, we are in the shoes of a leader, and again, it is based on experience that we had last year whenever we built a consortium for one of the call for EDF 21, and hopefully we will have a positive answer by the third week of July. So we only have a couple of days still to wait. So we need to build that consortium, and as it was mentioned by Guillaume earlier, we need to have a balanced consortium, and the constitution of usually the large group which are building up EDF project, building up the project based on a core group, meaning one entity per country. When I say one entity, it's because it's not always a large group. It can be also an RTO, for example, especially if we are into the research activities. So one entity per country, one of those countries that have declared interest into the topic. Whenever the work program was negotiated among the member states during the program committee, and basically in the very large consortium, that entity per country will try to gather its own supply chain, its national supply chain to manage it in order to have I would say one single approach in the consortium. Based on the technical contribution for the project, because the core group will not fully satisfy the requirements of the call, we will need to look for other partners. And for that, we will open the doors through different ways, and we will see that afterwards, to other potential partners. And what we will be asked most of the time is to have those potential partners to pitch in front of the core group. So usually we allow a 15-20 minutes presentation, and then out of what is presented by the company, the entity, then there will be a selection by the core group if the pitching is interesting for what we want to do. Okay. Of course, as the leader of a consortium, we will try to work out in a balanced geographical distribution of the consortium. And what we try to do is we try to understand who are the member states, which member states have supported the topic during the program committee negotiation. And for that, because there it means that they have shown interest into that topic. So once that's the case, once we have identified those member states, we are trying to find entities from those different countries. So to create that balanced consortium between different type also of entities, RTOs, SMEs, mid-cap, and large group, as it was mentioned also by Guillaume. Well, if it's a research project, we are more in favor, of course, of participation of RTOs and academics into the equilibrium of the consortium. If it's a development project, that's true that the diversity of the industrial supply chain, including SMEs, should be reflected into the consortium. We also are looking for a specific profile from time to time, but that could be at the very start of the consortium, but it could be also during the proposal drafting, because you know that once we are drafting the proposal and we have put a WBS and we have put the contributions of the different members or potential members of the consortium, we see that there are holes in the racket, if I may say. And in this case, we need to look for new partners. So the missing profiles that we will look for are usually based on technological requirements, if I may say, geographically, and also in terms of eligibility. It's a combination of the three. Then one thing also as a leader that we have in mind, and I think it's more and more often the case. I heard that for EDF 22, there's kind of a crisis of leadership. There's a lot of consortium that so far haven't found a leader yet. I think it's something that we all have in mind as potential leader, is that the leadership of a consortium is also something a bit political, if I may say, and it's maybe sometimes better to have a leader that is not one of the large company from one of those big member states. When I talk about big member states, I usually think about, Sweden, Germany, Italy, Spain, France. So having a leader from another country, a smaller entity, not always a large group, and of course, why not an RTO in terms of research whenever we are tackling a research project, we think, and I'm convinced of that it's sometimes a good thing for the evaluation of the proposal. This is something typically that Safran Electronic and Defense have experienced in EDIDP, which was one of the precursor instrument of EDF, and this is something that also we will do in EDF. Not always to be in the front line, because again, it's not always good, and we have also a number of people that work for us, engineers and so on, but they are also very busy by the latest project that we have submitted, and the one that we will participate at also in the future. So, and since management is something that is heavy, this is something that we need to keep in mind. In terms of the proposal itself, there's two aspects of it: the technical proposal and the administrative part of the proposal. Well, we need, as a consortium leader, to really understand that that's true for all partners, to really understand the needs and requirements that are expressed by the member state into the work program, because this is to those requirements plus the criteria of the Commission that we will need to answer, the proposal will need to answer. So, and for that, we need to build a common understanding of the outcome that is expected from the proposal. And we need to reach that common agreement all together. We also need to understand the contribution and the strengths of each partner and potential partner to really achieve a technical proposal where everybody will think that it fits perfectly well. Of course, we will not ever be able to satisfy all the potential contribution that a partner is suggesting, for example, because we might have some overlaps, we might have some holes. So we need to make sure that the overlaps are limited, are understood and justified, and we need to fill in the holes. So most of the time, all the partner comes to a consortium with a full list of participation or contribution that they want to make. And most of the time, not all those contributions will be inserted into the proposal, because we need to have cooperation, so we need to make space to the others. But we still need to make sure that the choices that are made are understood by everybody, and those choices are made collectively. Okay, so one point that I will emphasize later is that participation to consortium meeting is really important, even for SME, where the SME think that it might be a waste of time. The topic on which the SME will work is only a topic that will be discussed, I don't know, for maybe 30 minutes out of a day of workshop. Still, it is important to participate. We also need, as a consortium leader, to keep the tender submission schedule tight, to distribute the writing and the drafting work, and of course to compile the elements in order to make a proposal that is going to be coherent, that meets the evaluation criteria, and is understandable, readable, and so on. All that is a kind of a difficult work to achieve, and it happens and more often that the leaders are hiring a consultant company that help into making that proposal in the format, in the norm of what is required by the European Commission. And that consulting company is also helping the consortium into the administrative part of the proposal. Guillaume talked to you about those requirements a bit earlier. We need to engage partner to complete their administrative elements of the proposal very early in order to make sure that we don't rush at the very end. And as a consortium leader, at least Safran Electronic and Defense, we are always open to provide individual support, especially for SMEs, whenever it's the first time that they bid in an EDF project. And also, we try to build an effective and inclusive project management structure where everybody fits and think that he fits well. Then beyond, once the proposal has been submitted, the role of the consortium leader is, even if we don't have the answer yet of the evaluation, is to make sure that the link among the members of the consortium is still maintained, it's still alive, because it will be very difficult and rough, if I may say, to start almost from scratch over again whenever we will need to start the negotiation with the Commission on the grant agreement, meaning that we will need to start the discussion among the members of the consortium for the consortium agreement. Okay. We also need, as a leader, to start to structure the project management and put in place the calendar of all that. Once we have been awarded, if I may say, and the results are published by the Commission, we will have a couple of months, always too short, if I can say, to sign the grant agreement with the Commission. And signing the grant agreement with the Commission means that prior to that, we need to sign a consortium agreement among the members of the consortium, and that negotiation can take time. So we need to start that negotiation very early. And for example, in the case of the project that we submitted in EDF 2021, we don't have the result yet, but we started to negotiate the consortium agreement already in case, lucky, we get an award. We need also to support the partners of the consortium to provide the necessary element to the grant agreement, because there's a bunch of annexes that need to be filled in and to be provided at a due date. And again, we don't have much time. Usually we have between 4 and 6 months to finalize all that, with a bit of vacation at the beginning, so difficult. You need to keep that in mind, and to engage also discussion with the member states. For example, if we are in a development project, it means that they will certainly have a financial contribution from the member states that support the consortium. And for that, it means that the member state will need to sign an MOU among themselves, and they will need to sign also some way contract or whatsoever between its own industry and himself. So that takes a lot of time. For example, in EDIDP, we have some projects that have started in terms of grant agreement and so on. So it means that the project is running from the standpoint of the Commission, but from the standpoint of the member states, the MOU between the member states are still not signed, and the financial support of the member states have not arrived yet. Then we will have to negotiate the project security instruction, which is something that is quite important, and that for those projects are most of the time negotiated with the member states. In terms of the kickoff meeting, well, we need to remobilize, if I may say, all the partners to have a clear schedule of the deliverables, the tasking, and so on, and to gather regularly all the partners to keep the team spirit, if I may say. So now, if I will take the point of view of I'm not a large group, and I'm trying to integrate an EDF project. And what I will tell you is something that is also something that is important whenever you are a large group like we are, and we want to integrate an EDF project that is led by another one. It's not always easy, but for SME, I understand that it could be even more drastic. So by anticipation, you need to gather information as much as you can before the publication of the call. For example, this year with the work program, the Commission has published a multi-annual perspective, which is a document called MAP, that gives a bit of a perspective of the topics that are of interest by the member states for the future call of EDF. You need to start as early as possible to discuss with your member states based on that MAP document on what are the topics that is of your interest and where you think you could bring a contribution, even if the topic is just something that is not described yet into the map. It's still a couple of words, but still maybe you can make sure that you hook your contribution, your potential contribution to those couple of words. And then based on that map, you can start the discussion with the member states, and you can start the discussion with the member states since this member state is going to be soon discussing in the frame of the program committee, and to see if other nations are interested in that topic, which other nations are interested, and from there, just define maybe which potential large company could lead such project. Okay, so close relationship with your member states in order to see by anticipation where you could hook your contribution and your expertise on future potential project. Once the call text is out, and that's the case now, you need to have a more thorough and a more in-depth analysis of the work program and to identify the topics of your interest. And again, if there are too many of them, it will be too heavy. So be very careful with that, because even if a lot is done by the Commission for the SME, it is still something that is quite heavy. To discuss also with your member states to know which member states have pushed the topics that you identified as important for you. Because once you are able to identify those leading member states, then you maybe can think of what could be the leading industry, all right? Then to contact the potential partner from previous projects you participated into. Do not hesitate to reach them, to organize a 1-hour meeting with those potential partners as a first contact, and that will be a way for you to gather information on what they will do. And especially, I think a large group have a bit less reluctancy to share information with an SME rather than with a larger group, okay? Please also contact partners via association. I know, for example, in France, GCAT has organized matchmaking meetings with association from other countries. So if there is an association of defense industry in Luxembourg, push that association to get in contact with their counterparts in the larger countries, as expressed GCAT in France, but it's easy to find the potential association. Of course, use the Info Day of the European Commission, the one that has been organized last week. There's more than 1,000 participants, I think, that participated to that Info Day, physically and in hybrid. And the matchmaking or the B2B tools that have been created was also physically or hybrid. So, for example, as Safran, I was solicited by more than 50 entities, and I still have contact with them. The solicitation first keep on coming, first of all, and second of all, it keeps on also looking at creating business meetings in order to see if they're of their interest. And the IT tool is still open from that Info Day. And also there's the other tool that is the European Commission Funding and Tenders Opportunity page, where you can post also some interest linked to each of the topics that is of your interest and identified. In any case, what I think what is needed at that stage is really to prioritize what are the topics on which you really want to participate. Then you will, once you have identified those potential large partner, once you have you are in contact with them, you need to analyze prior to the meeting what could be your contribution to those requirements. If you come to a large company, as it happens, for example, in the B2B meeting, and say, well, you as Safran, what are the topics that in the context you are interested in? And me as an SME, I will try to stick to that. It will not match very well. At least personally, I know this is not the approach that I suggest. What I think it will be more useful is to really have a clear view on where you want to go, what you want to do, and then it will be stronger towards the large group. Okay, so prior to a meeting with a large group, please really analyze in depth what could be your contribution to the requirements of each of the topics that you have identified. And then, of course, you should market your contribution, your technological contribution to that entity, to that company. But please do not allow yourself to abuse of the political or more political arguments, such as the size of your company, the nationality of your company, the fact that if you're an SME coming from Luxembourg, you will certainly be a cross-border SME, so it brings bonuses. Bring the fact also that you have the support of your MOD, that the size of your budget that you requested is not that very big compared to the overall proposal, so therefore you can sneak almost everywhere you can. So, and advertise also the experience that you had already in Horizon Europe project, and even better on EDF or EDIDP, because there it will be, I think for the large company, it will be something that will be positive to know that you've been through already putting together supporting documents and so on. And in terms of participation to consortium meeting, as I said earlier, I think you need, this is where the fine-tuning of the participation of each partner are done and decide. So participating is something that is very important, and that's a way also to expand your network and your contact. So please do not hesitate to participate to those consortium meetings, even if you think that it could be a waste of time. Okay? And I think that makes the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Isabel. Very interesting your presentation. Thank you so much. I think there was numerous recommendations, and anticipation is certainly one of the key ones. You mentioned the multi-annual program of the European Commission. I think it is essential that we can already have you on the radar really at the earliest possible moment, and then prepare with you the upcoming work programs. And secondly, I think even though some consortiums might already be in place, prime contractors such as Safran need SMEs and research organizations, both from the technical and geographical point of view, to have balanced partnerships. Now, I understood that you have to leave quite early. That's why I just want to raise again this possibility of having questions now to Madame Desjeux. And I'll just check rapidly in the chat. So there don't seem to be any at the moment. There's one, in fact, which might be related more to the European Commission about the expected TRL level. Maybe you can answer from Safran side. Are you also looking at all the TRL levels? Are you looking at both research and development projects?
Yes, of course. We are looking at both, not always in the same position, as you understand. As I mentioned, for the research part, we are more encouraging to have RTOs that are taking the leadership of the research project. We think as Safran Electronic and Defense, it's fitted for them, and that's true that the TRL in this case are rather low. It can go from 3 to 4, 5. Going below that 1 or 2, I guess it is possible, and Guillaume will certainly answer better than me. But it's more fundamental research, and maybe it's something that is not quite adapted to EDF. And then when you go for the development project, then you can go beyond TRL 6 and beyond, and therefore RTOs are still needed at that phase. SMEs for sure, mid-cap for sure. As I said, we need the entire spectrum of and the entire richness, if I may say, of the EDTIB for those development phase.
Yeah, I think that this makes a good point. I think it's really needed at all levels. Just maybe a last question we have also here from the public, from Jörg Teger from ANG. Well, how can we have a better understanding of what are Safran's needs in terms of knowledge? So I guess what are possibly the call for projects that you want to position yourself?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I think there is a number of in 22 topics on which we will position ourselves. Not everything is secure yet. Just to tell you that from time to time and quite often, we are in a position where we are waiting for a larger group to tell us if we can come in or not. Might be sometimes easier to be an SME to enter in a consortium than a large group with a French flag, but that's the way it goes. And again, we won't lead any this year. I don't think so. That's not what we are doing so far. But if people are interested, the best way will be to contact me. I think I gave my address mail into the presentation to contact me. And please don't come asking me where I will go, but more where do you want to go and be? Where do you want to be? And then we will start the discussion. Okay.
Great, thank you. Just one last question then from the public. I think the question is here about how you see also the added value for our Luxembourgish industry to take part in future projects which are led by French industry. I think we mentioned already earlier and also in the discussion that it's very important to know from the beginning that Luxembourg is also there and is supporting its industry, and this is of key importance also for the consortium leaders. Would you maybe like just to add one word on this?
Well, I think that there is certainly a lot of organization in Luxembourg which have a lot to offer in terms of expertise in terms of technologies, savoir-faire that could be shared and really useful in all those projects. What I would say is, for us, participating in EDF project is a way also to support the research that we were supposed to do internally. So it means that the self-funding that we have identified in our internal roadmap, if we could have an external organization or instrument like the EDF to fund it, that's very good. So I guess this is the same thing for Luxembourg entities, and the closeness between our organizations in terms of Luxembourg and French. I think we have been cooperating in a lot of aspects. Space, for example, is one of them, where strong collaboration are ongoing. Well, it is to reinforce also that collaboration between entities of both of our countries. So.
Absolutely. I think this makes a good summary of it. With this, I would not like to take more of your time. I thank you very much, Isabel,
No
for having
problem.
stayed with us, and also for the question and answers. And I'll say goodbye on that point, and then
Thank
we'll
you.
go on our side with
Okay.
the info session. So,
Thank you.
following these two presentations from the European Commission and Safran, I think now the second part, and we still have time till 11:30, will be more focused on the national support that we can provide on Luxembourg side. So the European Defence Fund is a key program for the Luxembourgish Directorate of Defence, which is why I'm also delighted to have today with us Azilise Guérin, which is the Luxembourg national representative to the European Defence Fund, and she will briefly explain us why the European Defence Fund is so important for Luxembourg and how the Luxembourg Director of Defense can support Luxembourgish applicants. Azilise, the floor is yours.
Oops. So, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Alex, for this introduction. So, good morning to everyone. Welcome. Coming in after Guillaume's and Isabel's excellent interventions and information provided makes me feel that there is not much more left to say. But no, I think the most important has already been raised. And I really would encourage all of you to take on board all the precious advices that were given. Isabel also touched upon the necessity for you as industry and research organizations to liaise with your member states, and this to be done through the Ministry of Defense, so the Directorate of Defense in Luxembourg. And so I will briefly give you some pieces of information on how we see our R&D defense priorities, so that you may better understand how we could support you in your participation to the EDF. So, is it? No, I think it's one too far. Oh no, that was the second slide. All right, so I'll go straight to the point. Guillaume Galtier already explained to you the priorities and the thematic categories in the EDF. So as you may know, Luxembourg's areas of priority have very much evolved in the last years. They still actually do every year. And next to cyber and space, that have become a real political thing, it has become a major research topic, and now also in defense. There are some other topics that we look forward to focus on also in the EDF, such as digitization, new technologies, and so on. So from the 16 thematic categories that you see on your left, we have picked out 7 categories that really fit with what Defense Directorate plans to do in the next years. and what we intend to push also through our industry. And so these, well, you can see it. It covers space and cyber, of course. It covers materials. So we've seen that through the national call that Alex also spoke of. Of course, digital transformation, energy resilience. So energy resilience is a little specific topic because it's a topic which is not yet very much addressed in the frame of defense. It's something that is very much dual use. It's very new also in terms of funding from the defense side. So we don't really have a concrete idea of what we would support or not in that frame, but feel free to submit any idea you have or any proposal in that frame. That would be also very interesting from an EU point of view, and I think that would be interesting to also see some consortia building up in this very new topic. So the other ones, disruptive technologies, and of course the SMEs categories are also of interest for us. So I will hop on very fast to the next slide. When it comes to national support, there are two things that you should bear in mind when you submit your EDF project proposal. The first thing is that, of course, you have to ensure that it has a true defense applications. We've seen many cases in the past where companies had brilliant project ideas, but they just lacked this defense DNA, and the Commission is really thorough about that. It's if it is to be a dual use or a more civilian project, then there's plenty of other programs that are already there to fund it. So it really has to have this defense specificity, and it has to fit in the topic and call description, of course. The second thing is that you need to ensure that you, of course, cover or get the entire budget covered, either because it's funded by the EDF, or if you need co-funding, you really need to ensure when you submit the proposal that the whole budget is fixed. You know exactly from where the money is coming, how much each member states give, and so that your proposal is also eligible. If you don't have a clear budget line, then unfortunately the proposal could be stamped as ineligible. And so, of course, to do so, you need to ensure member state support. As Guillaume explained before, the EDF is divided into two windows. You have the research window, the development window. I guess you all know this. The difference between those two windows, again, is that the research window, if you submit a research project, it will most probably, if it is selected, be funded up to 100% by the European Commission. So there is no funding from member states required. If you want to submit a development project, the funding from the Commission, so apart from bonuses, I'm not speaking about bonuses high, just the very basic funding, will reach from 20 to 90%. So obviously, you will have to fill that gap with funding, either from member states, or if you manage in your consortium to fund it on your own, then all right. But you will still need support from member states. The most basic scenario is member states to support the project proposal politically. They say we commit to that project, we support it, and we co-fund it. This is, I think, the most easy thing to look out for. And for you just to understand why this is important, again, I think also on the EDF Info Day, it was mentioned at the Commission. I think Guillaume also touched upon it. The first goal of the EDF is to fund capabilities that are needed by the member states. So, of course, the only way for the Commission to ensure that the EU budget, which is actually member state money, to ensure that this money is spent accordingly, is to be sure that a project is sufficiently supported by member states. So the more a project will benefit member state support. So, for instance, let's say 8 member states that got together and say, we're going to co-fund that project, and we commit to eventually procure it when it's developed within the next 5, 10, or 15 years. Then this is a really, really strong point in the evaluation of your proposal. And to get to my actually last slide, if you're planning to submit a project proposal to the EDF as a lead company or not, even if you're just hopping on a consortium, please inform the Directorate of Defense, because we will actually be in a position to support you. But as the earlier you will tell us about, the more we will be in a position, to support you in providing funding, in providing other type of supports. I know lately there has been some other types of support that were requested in the frame of the EDF, such as signing letters of support. There is also letters of intent that can be signed without co-funding requested from the member states. So there's a lot of support that we can offer as a Ministry of Defense, but we really have to be aware early enough from about your intentions, because of course there's an internal procedure. Signing such a letter is not cannot be made in a few days, so we need some time to evaluate the project, to exchange with you, so that needs time. I would like to highlight one final aspect, a very, very important one. Luxembourg has national defense priorities, as we have stated before, and specific topics that it may support or may not support, just as this is the case in other member states. And please keep in mind that Luxembourg cannot financially support all of your projects, or all the ones that you're involved in or that you're submitting to us. So the fact that the Defense Directorate does not support your projects doesn't, however, mean that your project is not worth it, or that it will not make it into EDF funding. It should not hamper your participation in this specific topic and not in other topics or calls or whatsoever. So it will add some extra complexity, I guess, because there will be in case of a development project, there will be some funding, a funding gap to be filled, which can be filled by yourself, by the consortium, by other member states. So nothing is impossible, and we have had feedback from companies actually last year, I think, who were who heard consortia and lead companies tell them that if your member state does not co-fund, you cannot be in our consortium. This is wrong. This is totally contrary to the EDF rules. You really need to know this, because I guess that as soon as you tell the consortia that you actually know the rules of the EDF and that you can still participate in a consortium even if the member state does not support financially the project, then maybe that will also inform them and help you to secure your spots in the consortium. So to end this, I would really again encourage you to take on board the advice from Isabel on how SMEs can approach prime contractors and lead companies, and also do not hesitate to. Sorry, Alex, but to really call upon Alex and raise any questions you might have, also to me, to the Directorate of Defense, or to Alex. And I would wish you good luck in submitting your projects for this year's EDF calls. And until then, all the best and have a good day.
Thank you, Azelis. I think you made it also quite clear. So getting the support of the member states for those projects with our priority is key, and therefore also getting in contact with us as early as possible with Lux Innovation or the Director of Defense is key, so we can have you on the radar. I mean, as most of you know, Lux Innovation and the Director of Defense work hand in hand, and we can provide you with direct support on the partner search and consortium building. And this brings me then also to the next presentation, which will be about the support we can provide at Lux Innovation side. So Lux Innovation, as Luxembourg's innovation agency, is there to support you in your diversification and innovation endeavors, and also to go for European and international programs as such. And for Horizon Europe and the European Defence Fund, we have at Lux Innovation a quite similar approach when it comes to supporting our industry to better get access to these European funding programs. So this can go from project ideas to flagship projects, and will eventually always feed into finding the adequate funding instrument for your developments. In the case of the European Defence Fund and its 33 topics, this will first mean finding the right call for proposals, then finding the right partners and consortia, and eventually also support you in getting the necessary technical support to ensure that your application is complete. Now, for this year's EDF call for proposals, we have set up a tight timeline which shall enable our industry to get a potential support from the Luxembourg Directorate of Defense as early as possible. And we have divided this timeline into 3 steps. First step, we'll ask you to participate to a survey which will allow us to understand which call for proposals you are targeting. And this survey will end on the 22nd of July. Following this, we will engage into individual coaching for those of you who would like to benefit of it, and this will also essentially consist in getting access to B2B matchmaking possibilities with partner countries and companies. Following this consortium building step, we will ask those of you which are certain to participate in the identified consortia to fill in a simplified EDF one-pager project template, which will then also serve as a basis to get potential national support from the Directorate of Defense. This could then be a letter of support, a letter of intent, or potentially a co-funding in case of development projects. And finally, since negotiations before the deadline usually take some weeks, it is essential for us and for you to already have a clear idea of whom you will be your partners and your budgets by mid of September. So in summary, in this slide, you will find a link to the survey. In it, you'll find the shared version of the call topics, as well as the link to the more detailed call text. Based on this, you should be able to identify the adequate call for proposals. Just don't forget to fill in and to submit to us in time. In the next slide, you can then see the network of partners we rely on to support you in the consortium building process. So on one side, Lux Innovation is the national focal point for the EDF, and as such is in direct contact with its counterparts in the other EU countries. And on the other side, Lux Innovation has also close relationships with numerous national defense industry associations, which, like us, are willing also to share names of companies and research organizations and the targeted calls for proposals in order for the European defense industry to better find each other. Certainly, I mentioned it at latest in September when you have identified your consortium, your technical contribution, and the preliminary budget. Please fill in this template, which will be provided to you to ensure that the Luxembourg Directorate of Defense and ourselves have you on the radar, and that we can support you on the final steps before the submission. So these are basically also my recommendations. Eventually be also aware of the fact that we obtain ourselves requests from existing consortia to help identify them companies of Luxembourg and research organizations. So make sure to inform us again as early as possible about your intentions. Now, this being said, I would like to give eventually the floor to our testimonials, which have been waiting also here in this call. And I'm very happy that we have today with us a number of colleagues and companies from research organizations and companies which participated to the European Defense Fund 2021. So we have Olivier Roux, CFO of Mtronics, George Bultadakis, Deputy R&D Director at European Dynamics Luxembourg, Michel Pousset, CEO at LMO, and Jamel Kadraoui, Head of Research Unit at Luxembourg Institute of Science and Technology, the list. Now we have approximately 10 to 15 minutes to have this testimonial session. I would primarily have 2 questions for each of you, and then we can still see if there's any other questions that then we can take at the end of the session. So for the first question, as you have been a participant of the 2021 call for proposals, could you briefly explain why you participated to UPD funds and why, also based on your experience so far, the EDF represents a huge opportunity for the Luxembourg industry, which is mostly active in the civil domain? I would propose to start with Jamel and then followed on by George, Olivier, and Michel.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Are you hearing me very well?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Thank you, and good morning to everyone. So basically, from list side, to make it short, defense and, by the way, health are the 2 important funding schemes or programs that are extremely important for LIST today and for Luxembourg, by the way. And we are interested because we believe that the technologies, the activities that we do globally within LIST and especially at the informatics department are fully eligible to what the defense programs today are looking for. So basically, we are targeting dual use cases. This is the key challenge that we have to keep in mind. To keep it short, Alexander, this is the main motivation that we are considering, and it becomes more and more strategic for us to be in this program in the future.
Thank you, Jamal. I think, George, on your side with European Dynamics, you have a lot of experience in the Horizon Europe program. What does EDF represent for you?
Okay, thank you, Alex. Good morning to everyone. So yes, I would like to bring the perspective of industry. For us, especially when it comes to the defense sector, we know very well that in most of the cases, or in certain cases, time to market of our research outcomes is quite long, sometimes because we have, first of all, the regulatory constraints that need to be addressed, but also some reluctance, I would say, from our side, from company side, to invest in internal R&D activity when we see, at least in the short term, a limited procurement opportunity. And you know very well that also in the defense sector, procurement in certain cases can be disproportionate to the upscale of the challenge. So this can prove definitely a drawback, especially for innovation, for the promotion of innovation and the new challenges that lie ahead in the defense, the security, the cybersecurity sector. And we believe that the EDF mechanism and also all the European, let's say, mechanisms of this kind, where we can get partial or completely funding for a collaborative defense research and development activity, we believe it is very important for us, the participating organizations, and for the member states. And this definitely can lead to an innovative and competitive industrial base where we would like to become part of this.
Thank you, George, for this contribution. Then to go on to Olivier, I think, Olivier, for Mtronics, the defense part is also quite new, so you have a background in space. Could you briefly explain how you entered the EDF and what kind of experience it has presented so far?
Yeah, actually, thank you very much, Alexander, because it's mainly because of you that we entered the EDF. We've been approached because of our background in space and technology. And for us, it was very interesting to discover this EDF mechanism. Actually, we have submitted a proposal for the EDF 2021, and the description made by Isabelle was exactly what happened, although we were not in this consortium with Safran, but typically exactly what it was. It was very interesting. So this consortium we entered is 9 companies, 7 nationalities, with really a good cooperation led by the Prime. it was a fantastic creation, and we, as Isabel says, we cross finger in the next week that we can be awarded by the European Commission for this project, which is a research project, but very high standard. For us, definitely it will bring us into a new R&D project that will make both military and civil application with a huge potential. Of course, I cannot tell you what it is, but it was fantastic. If I can say one thing, because the end of the call are in November, or you have to submit your proposals. It takes a long time to prepare this, and it demands a lot of work, technically, administratively, financially wise. So if you want to start, make it sure that you have a good cooperation with your consortium, with your other partners, and that you are prepared to do this job properly to not miss the deadline. Thank you, Alexander.
Thank you, Olivier. Also very interesting again about the dual use. And I think, Michel, you had also a similar experience. So you were actually also contacted from external companies in France. Could you briefly elaborate on that?
Yes, so obviously we're a young SME. We'd never done anything within defense. We were working within the space industry, within the civil side. And one of the space companies we worked with was involved with DGA in France, discussing on some defense applications, and identified that what we were doing within the civil side could actually be readapted to defense applications. And we put together an SME bid, actually. So we didn't work with the prime, but based on indications on kind of the national priorities, we put an SME bid between various entities within Europe together, and we applied that. For us, it was a first-time process, but the conversion and reapplication of our technology in defense provides actually quite an interesting application for the government. So it was really a nice match, which allowed us to enter this sphere. And it was made quite easy by you, Alexander and Azilis, to implement that. So we're really happy we got in.
Great, thank you for this feedback. Yeah, there's a lot of innovation in the civil world, and there's a lot that can be adapted to the military. So I think there's a lot of potential in Luxembourg as such. I would just then take another question to the four of you. Of course, the process for making these applications is not a simple task. So could you briefly explain, each of you, what were the main challenges during these processes, and also maybe tell us how could you interact with the prime contractor, the consortium, the European Commission, and the national authorities to face these challenges. Jamel, if you may, you could also start again.
Yes, a very good question. So indeed, LIST has been invited and involved in one development-related project. So I can bring my experience feedback. I was in front of with my team in the development of this project. So first of all, I mean, everyone mentioned that it's a huge work. This is very important that we need to be prepared because these consortia are extremely large, and it requires a strong connections, discussions with the consortium, and mainly with the coordinator, where the coordinator will be facing a very, very strong time, because there will be a lot of activities. And the coordinator, if you are not strongly connected to the person in charge of the work, you might miss some challenges that I will explain. From our side, we face two main challenges. The first one, which is about the ethical aspects, because and big institutions like us in Luxembourg, we are really sensitive to the ethical aspects, and basically we need to make sure that we are compliant with our policies. Because, for instance, we don't want to go for development or production of weapons, but we are aware about the potential of the good cases. So basically, during the preparation of the project, we know that there is a package provided by the Commission in order to help, but if you don't stress it out that early in time, you might face difficulty, especially internally within LIST. We had to make sure that we are fully compatible to the ethical aspect from this. And this was really very complicated task, and we got the real, answers prepared by the coordinator. This task was not on high priority, at least in our experience. So you need to make sure that if you are sensitive to that, to make it really happen, prepared and ready for internal validation in a way that to avoid to be get out of the consortium because of this thing that has not been done in time. Second one is since it's about development project, co-financing is a key there. So you need to be aware that your budget will not be clarified at the beginning. It's something that will be floating over the time because of different aspects, and the process is like that. So you need to be prepared. You cannot say my engagement from the budget viewpoint is fixed when you start coming in the proposal. Indeed, you have to negotiate your contributions, you have to estimate your effort, but even with that, you are not in a way to get the final figure for your budget. So this is very important, either supported or not supported by your Minister of Defense, or as it is mentioned, indeed supported nationally or not. This does not mean that you are out if you are not, but this is a very good question we faced there. So we learned that, of course, if we are interested to be in the project, you should be prepared to be dynamic in a way that even getting your budget at the last minute, it should not be disturbing your organization. So this is what we had. We got the chance to be in the proposal without support from ministry, but we had to find ways to still be in because the topic is extremely important. So this is what I can say, Alexander.
Thank you very much, Jamal. Yeah, so it's really important to start as early as possible, also in the consortium meetings, really to make your points and your critical points aware to everybody. George, on your side, what was the main challenges you faced?
Okay, first of all, I agree with what was mentioned earlier. I have to admit that in our case, and because of mainly the prime contractors' prior engagement, but also our very good knowledge and activity in this kind of research programs, we had a rather smooth process when it comes to the real content of the proposal, of the concept idea, and so on and so forth. I have to say, though, that the time constraints, and these constraints had to do with the evolution of the consortium and of the proposal idea, did create a challenge in delivering in a timely manner the administrative details, and specifically the budget plan, to the national authorities for further approval and support and the decision to co-finance. So I think that there was a challenge there. But I have to say that in our case, we were very, very delighted to see the flexibility of the Ministry of Defense that followed all the activity and supported us throughout the preparation of the proposal until the end. And also to say that we are really thankful to both Lux Innovation and the Ministry of Defense, because apart from the support that they provided us during the proposal preparation and also the decision, the final decision for the co-funding, they also we received great support through the networking activities, events, but also through your good knowledge of our company's business activity, and this matchmaking that you achieved, let's say, and with the prime contractor that was in search of complementary expertise. So this is our experience, at least from the NDF 2021 endeavor.
Thank you, George. And I think you mentioned an important point. If defense as such is of interest for you and you have technologies which can be relevant, it's always good that you contact us so we have you on the radar. And as I said before, yes, we do have from time to time also requests from outside asking for participation of Luxembourg, and then it's good that we know that you're also ready to jump on it. Olivier, on your side, what was the biggest challenge last year?
Biggest challenge actually is to realize that the timing and the schedule is very tight. So when it is organized by the prime, definitely you have to follow all the meetings and weekly meetings, technical, administrative, and then face, even with the administrative part, you are facing difficulties while registering on the EC portal, while filling in some documents that are requested. And for this, actually the prime role is essential. And we got a great help from our prime, which is Hensoldt, which was introduced to us by Alexander. And if you don't get this help from the prime, I think it's very, very complicated. And I think Michel can confirm this after me. He lived it without a prime, without help, or just a consultant maybe. And even such big companies like Ansot, they managed to hire consultants to help them to fill in correctly all the documents in the timely manner, etc., etc. So it's something not to misestimate. You have to make sure that you have the dedicated person available for these meetings that lasted, I think, 4 months totally before we submitted the proposal, definitely. And as I mentioned, we submitted it 45 minutes before the deadline. So it was really the clock ticking. So that's what we encounter, but definitely a very rich experience, either technically, administrative wise, and also, let's say, humanly. And really, I insist, Isabel made a very clear description on the process on what happens and when it happens and how it happens. It was just exactly what we lived. Thank you, Alexander.
Thank you, Olivier. And yeah, I think you mentioned also external consultants might also be of help to go through this application process. And I think in some country, this is also something which can be subsidized. Michel, how was it in your case? Did you also rely on external help?
Yes. So obviously we were a lot of SMEs. I believe only 1 or 2 had worked on the defense proposal or project, but as a subcontractor. So, you know, to coordinate and do this is a lot of work if you're SMEs. Usually if you've got a big prime, that helps. So we were very lucky that within the prime coordinator within our activity was in France, and there were some grants available in France to actually pay an external company and cover part of the cost. They don't cover the full cost of preparing the proposal. And you even said, even some companies like Safran mentioned they use it. So for us, it was really the only way to do it. They prepared everything. They put the schedule together, the weekly meetings. It's all about continuously building a proposal. It's not about writing a proposal in the end. It's step by step doing all the steps. That was really beneficial for us. I think the second aspect is I did not know how all the national support elements worked or whatever. So we came quite late to the table to speak to you, Alexander, but both you and Azilis were very keen on responding quickly, getting us information quickly, and actually helping us out. What do you have to do in order to get there? So I think we had challenges understanding the process, but an external party for implementing the proposal was great. And actually reaching out to you and Azilis really helped us to very quickly get back on track. And I admit we didn't deliver 45 minutes before, we delivered 2-3 days before. So actually it ended up being okay.
Okay, that's great to hear. And I think also the intention of this year is to definitely be a bit more early on. Therefore, yeah, I can just point out again that we are there to support you. We launched this survey. Just let us know what you are targeting, and we'll be there to support you on all the remaining steps. We are basically now at the end of the session, so I would already like to thank you very much to Testimonials for all your insights, also the European Commission for the overview of this year's call, and of course the very important contribution also from Isabelle Desjeux with tips and recommendations I really ask you to follow. Now, I don't think at the moment there are any other questions in the chat, but I'll check again. Just now is the chance. If it's not the case, I think I'm very happy that you have all stayed with us for the whole session. And yes, we both at the Lux Innovation, at the Director of Defense, at the European Commission will remain, of course, available for any questions that come up. And with this, I'd like to thank you again, wish you fruitful discussions, fruitful readings for the call text, and then a fruitful first afternoon after the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexander. Bye.
Bye-bye.